welcome everyone. Another data-driven session. Um, we've got a lot of people on. This is great. We do this once a month. As many of you know, Jared's usually our featured speaker. We have brought in some other folks, but I want to make this point that every session that we have, all the sessions land on our YouTube channel. So Zeomatrix YouTube, just as a refresher. So if you want to go back and listen to them, this is a good one today. You can certainly follow along, but go to YouTube, check them out. They'll be there recorded. So you guys have met me many times through these data-driven events. You've met Jared. He'll be giving the presentation today. We're going to talk about advanced visualizations. I'll go through a little bit of a summary on all the stuff we'll talk about here in a second. So just a quick meeting format. Everyone does have the ability to come off of mute. So we want to make this interactive. So if you have a question, feel free to come off of mute, ask a question. If you would rather use the chat window, you can do that too. I'll keep an eye on the chat. But if you're not, asking a question, if you could stay on mute, that would be amazing for Jared's flow. That would be awesome. So let's get into very quick kind of overview of Jared and myself. I've been in the Tableau community 10 years. Used to work at Tableau. You've been in the ecosystem, Jared. Is this number correct? Is it 8 years, 9 years?
What is it now? It's 2024, so it's actually coming up on 9 years. So we'll roll that over soon.
Okay. Yeah, we will. We'll update that. But Jared's one of our lead consultants, so he's day to day, he's working with customers, and he is phenomenal in the product. So really excited for his presentation on advanced visualization. So to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about, we picked what we thought were the most practical visualizations that you can use in Tableau that can level up what you're building in reports. Now, there's more out there. There's a caveat. There's more visualizations out there. If anyone has seen Tableau Public, there's a lot of very technical visualizations that you can get to, but we kind of picked ones that are easier to bite off, that can give your dashboards a bit more flair, level up the reporting that you're doing. So quick kind of overview on what we're going to cover. It really ranges from things like rounded bar charts, donut charts, heat maps, using separate color legends, and then some advanced mapping. We'll also talk a minute about viz extensions in Tableau. If anyone tuned in to Tableau conference this year, whether you were there or listened to it live or the recorded version, they are in beta. They're going to release something called viz extensions. So we'll show a little bit about what that looks like, but ultimately you can bring in extensions that you could bring in other chart types that aren't natively as easy to do in the Tableau product. So we'll touch on that a little bit as we go. Jared, did I miss anything here? I think that covers it, and we'll get out of PowerPoint.
No, that was a great intro. And yeah, we can dive on into some visualizations.
Live demo. That's our next slide. Okay.
Awesome.
I will be keeping an eye on the chat. I'll stop share. Jared, we'll let you get teed up here.
All right.
And I think we have record attendance today, so thanks everyone for hopping on. This is awesome.
That's fantastic. And Stuart, feel free as we're going through these, feel free to speak up. For y'all who are on the outside of this, Stuart gives me a ton of credit by having me stand up here and go through these demos. But these ideas of things that we share are all brainstormed from our whole team. We're collecting ideas and demos from people, and then I just get to come up here and kind of walk through them and show you all how to do them. But it really is a big brain trust effort to get this here. And some of this stuff, Stuart was recommending ways of doing it that I actually like better than the ways that I was doing it. So we'll call that out as we go through it, because there's some really slick tricks in here. The first place that we want to start is really simple, just using separate color legends for measures in a table. So if we wanted to look at, for example, profit sales and quantity for individual customers. We're using our trusty sample superstore data that comes with all of the Tableau software that you have. If you ever want to try and replicate this, you can add a data source and just pull in this sample superstore down at the bottom, and you'll be using the same data that we use for these demos.
Yeah, follow along if you want. You're going to go, I think, slowly enough, Jared, that people can follow along.
I'm going to try to, because I'll get out of breath if I go too quick.
Right.
So we talked about looking at profit. We're going to pull profit out. We talked about looking at quantity. So we'll drop quantity right on top, and that's going to give us the measure values with the measure names at the top. And then we'll bring out sales as well. And once we have sales, we can drop it here, or we can drop it right down here in the measure values box. This gives us a little bit more control over where it lands in terms of the order. And this is great. Now we can see our sales, our profit, and our quantity ordered all in one table, but we're not getting a lot of those immediate takeaways because we have to actually read all of the numbers. If we drag our measure values up to color, and I'm just holding what I think would be the equivalent on a PC of control to kind of duplicate that, as opposed to dragging the whole thing up and removing it from text. On a Mac, it's going to be the command key. So then we have measure
shortcut. Yeah. Nice shortcut. I use that a lot.
Trying to call those out as we do them too, so that people aren't just like, whoa, how did that thing double?
Right. Good point.
So we take measure values, we duplicate that from text to color, and then I'm going to change these marks to squares just to get more of that filled table. You can do this with continuous measures. And this is nice. It's fine. But sales, profit, and quantity aren't really on the same scale. Sales is always going to be a positive number. Profit could be positive or negative, and quantity is going to be multiples lower than sales or profit because it's the individual number of items and not the actual dollars. So if we want to see these visually independently, we come over here to the measure values color pill, and we can use separate legends. And what that's going to do is it's going to split that legend out into 3 different color legends, and it's already gone through and done some work to figure out what it thinks we need. So it's measuring sales and quantity on a single color spectrum, but it's already got profit on this orange to blue diverging color. And we can mess with these a little bit if we want. We can change sales to a green spectrum, maybe profit. We take the red, green, white. And this is an option, not necessarily considered visual best practices because a lot of folks are red, green colorblind, which is part of why Tableau defaults to that blue and orange. But we have the option now of using different colors on each of these 3 measures to kind of see them independently. So now, even though 81 and 73 are way lower than 14,400, we can still see the differentiation in quantity versus sales versus profit using separate legends there. So Tableau, not huge on throwing everything in text tables, but they still give you some really nice options for formatting text tables if you so choose. All right. So that's a really easy appetizer to this conversation. This next one is going to be a pretty cool visual way to find trends in data. So we're going to look at a time series of sales over time by subcategory. So if we want to start with subcategory in our rows shelf, and then for our time, let's take the order date, and maybe we want to see this by week. So per week across all of our data, we want to see sales. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop sales on size and then change this to a circle. And what that does is it gives us these dots with the sum of sales on size. And if we increase that size a little bit, you can start to kind of see where the trends are in the data really quickly visually. So there's no numbers here. We're not seeing necessarily what the scale is, but you can start to pick out something like copiers is a lot more inconsistent. You've got a big range between the biggest sales and the lowest sales, and there's these big gaps in the middle, whereas something like chairs is a lot more consistent. There's always chairs being sold. The range and the size of sales is a little bit different. Art is not as big of sales, but it's still pretty consistent. So you can really easily start to pick out where those big outliers are in your data and what those trends and seasonal rises and falls might be across different subcategories, different years, things like that. And it's really quick and easy to pull something like this together.
Seems like this one's great if you have uh, more granular data, like at a day level, week level, right? I guess it could be, I guess it'd be valuable at a year or month level, but to your point, you really do see some trends.
Yeah, I mean, if we went to like month, you still see some of it. You still see like furnishings pretty consistent. Chairs, you start to actually see a little bit more variability month to month, but you still have that really choppy series in copiers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility with this. This is probably one of the more visually abstract examples that we're going to go through today. But if you can get your end users used to looking at something like this, it's actually a really nice way to pick out those outliers and those trends.
I guess you could even layer in other measures on color if you do like a profit or something.
Yeah, so if we threw profit on color, now we can start to look at some of those outliers and say, whoa, there's a
There you
big
go.
order here, but we didn't even make money on that. So do
Mm-hmm.
we want orders like that? Do we want more of that if we're losing money?
Right.
Probably not. Copiers is a little bit more consistently profitable, even if the sales are inconsistent. And then
Right.
you get stuff like binders all over the place. You've got blue, you've got orange. There's no
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
reason to it.
I also like we've done a session on zone visibility. That could be interesting where you have a view like this and then another view that's maybe not as abstract that someone can look at and pick out the same data points in a different way. So if you haven't seen zone visibility, that session, that could be really interesting. Have a couple of views for people they could look at.
Yeah, definitely. This is
Cool.
also one that would play really well with visualizations in Tooltip, which we can get to if we have time towards the end. I think we've covered that on previous sessions too, but if you have a viz like this, you want people to be able to hover over and see the detail in a tooltip, that can be really useful to get that second level of analysis, that next question answered before they even have to go and ask it. So yeah, this is a fun one. This sort of dots over time. The next one that we're going to go over is way back on the business practical side, just adding a little bit of visual flavor to your dashboards. We're going to be talking about rounded bar graphs. So this is one that's kind of funky to set up. If we want to see a rounded bar graph by subcategory, I'm going to start by pulling out sales. And then I'm going to create this kind of ad hoc calculation that's just an average or a min or a max of 1. And I'm going to drop that on top so that I have my measure values and my measures down here. This is sort of the foundation of what we're doing, and I'll explain why once we see the graph. So from here, I'm going to actually take the measure values and drag it up to columns. And then the measure names, once I change this to a line or to a line graph, I'm going to drop measure names on path. And this is where it gets kind of funky. But if we increase the size, you can start to see now we actually have these rounded lines or these rounded bars instead of a regular squared bar graph or something like that. And the reason that this works is that what we're doing is we're actually plotting a path along the measure names from the average zero, which is this point here, to our sum of sales for any given subcategory, which is out here on the end. So this whole bar in the middle is really just a path that Tableau is drawing with this path function from the zero line to wherever our sales end up for that subcategory. But it gives this kind of a more sleek, modern look to a bar graph that could really come in handy and just help make your dashboards look a little bit more polished and professional. Does that make sense? It's a real funky one, but you can always go back to this recording and look back over how to do it.
Yeah, I love the look of it. It's cool, and I've wrestled a little bit. Just a forewarning, like some of the formatting, if you add labels, can get interesting because you have
Oh,
two
yeah.
measures, right? That kind of dummy measure and then sales in this case. So, but it's really neat to play around with, and it could certainly be valuable at times.
Yeah, so if you throw labels on, you end up with labels on both points. So I wonder, you min max by cell.
What if you go to text and you remove it? Are there two? Yeah, I'd have to go back and remember.
Yeah, now it's gonna bug me.
I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, the formatting can be interesting, but there's a way. There's a way to
Um,
remove. There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to do line ends and then remove the label at the start of line,
Yes,
and
that's
that'll
what it
take
was.
off that average zero.
Yeah. Cool. You solved it.
Yeah.
It's great.
We're getting into we're getting off the deep end of things that Tableau
Yes.
gets out of the box, and we're getting into the place where you have to kind of tweak things a little bit more.
Yes.
So let's go back even further into the realm of sanity. We'll just talk about stacked bars real quick. So this is one that's really helpful if you want to see parts of a whole distribution within a category. So we'll use our trusty subcategory again. And if we want to look at sales, we've got a bar. That's great. If we want to see how those sales are broken out by region, we can do that. But this doesn't really tell us how much of each subcategory is made up by each region relative to each other subcategory. Right now, we can see it really easily within labels or within binders what that distribution looks like, but it's kind of hard to tell because of the difference in the size of the bars, what the distribution is amongst regions for paper versus phones. The bars are just such different sizes, it's a little bit tough to tell. But if we take this sum of sales and we make that a percent of total, and then compute that percent of total using table across instead of table down, it's going to give us for each subcategory what the percent of sales from each region was. And if we bring this over to label, now it becomes really easy to see if we look at labels to machines or furnishings to fasteners, it's easier to tell what is that actual distribution. So, between 33.7 from the West region in art versus 22.7 for machines from the West region, it's a little bit easier to tell that, okay, the West region is really driving a lot of the sales for fasteners, driving almost half the sales for tables. If we look at something like East, East is one of four regions, but it's driving over a third of the sales for bookcases and for copiers. It's a lot easier to start pulling those trends and those data points out of a view like this. And it's just, a couple steps beyond what Tableau gives us out of the box. We just have to run that quick table calc and tell it how to calculate it. And then we have that data right in front of us. Any questions on that? It's one that we see a lot of.
Yeah, agreed. Nathan says it's a great chart. This is really like a business practical chart right here.
Mhm.
Another way to think about it and look at it. And same zone visibility, you could have a view where it's not broken at percent of total, right? And then a view you flip to that goes here and giving people options.
Yeah, definitely. You can have a view that starts just like this, just sales by subcategory, and then have a zone visibility flip to this view. Super easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. The next view that we want to go through is another one that I actually think is really business practical, but we don't see a ton of. And it's kind of a fun one. We're going to build out a calendar in Tableau and then view some of our metrics on that calendar. So this is another one that has a lot of setup behind it, but bear with me for a moment. We'll get this rocking and rolling. So we're going to start with the week of the order date. And then we're going to grab the weekday. I'm going to go ahead and type this in as a date part. Weekday of the order date. That's going to give us that Sunday through Saturday view. And then I want to filter this to a particular month. So let's just take like last month, May of 2024. Awesome. And I'm going to hide the week. And after hiding the week, let's pull out sales so we can see that and make this bigger. And let's go ahead and add the day of order date onto text so that we can actually see. We'll change this back to a square so we get that nice fill. I'm going to align that number in the upper right. And we're starting to see this calendar take shape. For better formatting, I'm going to go ahead and add in some lines like we would expect to see. So we're going to get some nice dark row dividers in there. We'll take some column dividers as well. Make sure it's just on like the blackest black and a solid line. And now, I mean, it looks just like a page out of a calendar. And for every date that we have data, we can see what those sales look like. We can see where those hotspots are. May 19th was a really high sales day. The 20th and the 14th, the 8th and the 1st. Fridays are really light. You know, we had 3 Fridays where we didn't even have, I guess 4 Fridays because May had 31 days. So 4 out of our Fridays, we had no sales. It's $1,300 on Friday the 3rd. This is a fun view. You know, if you have something that, if you're dealing with things like appointment schedules or service tickets, seeing some of that data displayed over a calendar like this by month can be really nice. And I want to say, I'm going to go off script here. If we drop the month of order date in pages, what is that going to do? That's going to show all of that. I wanted to say that there was a way to do this to where it would show us just that month still. Right now, it's going to show everything here. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Stuart,
Or you could hit the play button and like flip and just flip through months.
Yeah. I know you could do it with parameters. I thought pages would be a quicker way to get to it. Wonder if we...
That's interesting though.
Yeah, it's just kind of like flipping down through. Okay. Well, maybe we'll drop that as a YouTube short if we can figure that one out. We'll plug it on at the end of this. Because I know we can do it with parameters where you could just flip through calendar pages. And I was hoping that pages would give us a way to do that. Because pages is also something that's kind of criminally underutilized. There's not a ton of use cases for it, but it's a great feature when you can get it. Even still, if we show this filter and we just change this to like a single value drop down, this will still let you flip through. We can go from May to April, April to March, and this will still give your end users the ability to see from month to month what that calendar view looks like. So there we go. We brought it around and saved it. And it's going to keep me up now trying to figure out if pages too. Keep an eye out. We'll release a supplementary video if we can get to that. All right.
That's cool. Good chart.
Yeah,
Good chart.
It's a fun one. Let's talk maps. This is one that maps are also something that we don't come across as much as I would expect to, but you can drive so much data with map views. If we start with a state view, and I want to do this as a map so that it's filled, that's great. We drop like sales on color. This is neat. This is nice. It tells us by state what our sales are. But if we wanted to add some additional detail here and look at this by city as well, we can add a marks layer to actually drop something on top, and we could look at profit by city. So if we drop this on the city card, now we're actually seeing that profit by city. Most of it is not at the two extremes, so it just ends up in kind of that gray middle. We can drop this to like 70% opacity, increase the size a little bit, and we start to, the size slider is always so funky. We can start to pick out a little bit more of where like there's some dark orange, there's some blue down here. And this is kind of neat. The other thing that we could do with this is use the first layer on state as sort of a background map. And maybe on this one, we want to see this by region. And so now we can see where those cities are within our region breakout. I'm actually going to drop country on here too, because I know we have some Canada ones. And then we can start to see where those cities are. And now maybe we want to drop sales on this view. And we can start to see where some of those different sales hotspots are. Let me add a little bit of a border to that, just to add some clarity, start to see where those overlaps are a little bit better. And we can drop the opacity on this as well so that it fades into the background just a bit. But that lets us kind of see, great, okay, so now we know where these clusters of cities are that we have sales, and then also which region they're in. So if we have regional sales managers, we can start to meet with them and say, hey, you've got a whole bunch of stuff here in your central region, in the Midwest Great Lakes area, but we're not really doing a whole lot in Kansas, Nebraska, even Missouri. There's some good good pockets of cities out there where we could probably be driving some sales. And so now we have a really clear way visually of pointing out where are those big groups of cities where we're driving sales, which region are they in, using those two different layers on the map.
That's a really great point about the analysis that you can do and the planning you can do. That's cool.
And this is one that, yeah, I mean, if you're managing a sales team and you have regional managers, you could have this up on a screen in the office all day and just have it pop daily sales. And you can see, where are the sales coming from each day and just have that scoreboard up. I know when I've worked with sales teams in the past, like having that visual scoreboard drives so much friendly competition, and people are just like, I need to be the one that has the numbers on the scoreboard. Stuff like that. Those are some of the most fun Tableau engagements, is where you can, have a dashboard that's just up displaying data all the time for people to consume.
Yeah. Man,
we're going all over the place today.
Yeah, we are. That's how I ordered it. I was like, there's no rhyme or reason, but let's just get through as many as we can.
Yeah, I'm looking down the script and I'm like, oh man, yeah, we're going from maps to sparklines. We're going to talk sparklines here. So sparklines, at their base, they're just line graphs, but it's these really nice compact line graphs that let you get a sense of scale and trend over time super quickly. They don't take a ton of time to digest. We're not going to include axes, numbers, grid lines, nothing. It's just how are things trending. So what that looks like is, if we want to start with order date, we'll maybe do that by month as a continuous month. And then if we want to split this out by region and look at the sales, we can get this, we get a nice line graph. That's great. but we want to take like all of the anything that would be distracting out of this. So we're going to take off this header. We're going to take off this header. We're going to take off these the grid lines, the zero lines. We don't want any of that. All we want is this simple line. And this is something that we might put over on like the left side of a dashboard just to see that trend over time, either the left or maybe along the top of a dashboard, just so that we can see what that trend is. Okay, South had a big spike. They've been pretty consistent though. And then they've got another spike and maybe they're starting to trend up. We can see East has a lot of inconsistency, but an overall upward trend. And then West and Central have a much more consistent upward trend, especially in the West. We can tell all of that without needing to know what are the exact numbers, how many sales exactly in dollars and cents. That's not the point here. We're just trying to get that first initial takeaway of how are we trending? How are we doing? And we can see that with this without getting distracted by all the other marks and points and numbers.
Jared,
So
I suppose it wouldn't look too cluttered even with a trend line on here, right? Maybe
totally.
even format that some and
Yeah, so if we were just
make
throw
it a
on
little
the
linear.
linear trend line, you can see
Yeah.
those more clearly, just boom, upward trends. This is pretty flat. It's an upward trend, but obviously the line is much higher and lower compared to something like the West. A lot more inconsistency.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
That's
something
cool.
like that gets you a ton of takeaways just right away. That's a fun one. And then we're going to stay on this sheet and we're going to talk dual axis and shared axis. So I'm actually going to back this up a couple of steps. I'm going to show the header here again. So for something like a dual axis, this is something that's super common. We see this a lot, probably on the more basic side of advanced visualizations. It's just like one step beyond what Tableau gives you out of the box. So if we've got sales here on this axis, and we want to grab profit and see that too, we can do that. And if we right click here, we can click on dual axis and actually see those both in the same cell now. And we see the sales and we see the profit. If you want to make it so there's less confusion, you can also synchronize those axes so that now they're both using the same scale. They're both going up to a little over 40K. And that lets you see how those numbers compare to each other on a dual axis. Now, the flip side of that is if we want to put them on a shared axis. So if we do that, we're going to have sales out and then take profit, and we're going to drop it right on top of the sales axis. And you can see there's like those two rulers in green under my cursor. That's telling us that we're going to put these on a shared axis, and that changes from sales to value. And now we see that we're actually using measure values and measure names, with profit and sales as our measure names.
So
You
you
want to take
could
this,
add more measure values then, that is to say.
you could add more measure values. Um,
At the risk of
um,
of of it being overly confusing
totally.
to the end
Yeah, I mean, if
user.
we
But
wanted to
yeah.
drop like quantity in, we could and get that in there as a third measure value. But kind of like we talked about on the use separate legends example, quantity is on sort of a different scale, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
in dollars and cents, it's in individual units. What we could do is drop quantity on as a dual axis with a shared axis. So now we see
Whoa.
our sales, our profit, and our quantity, and they're all kind of on the same sheet, which looks a little bit funky and busy. There's certainly ways to get around that, but it's an option. You can have multiple measures on one axis as measure values, and then a separate one on a dual axis as well. So showing sales and profit on one, and then quantity on a second axis.
could you, I guess you could in theory format the quantity line and make it sort of be there, but not, but your more important measures are in front, and yeah, and have it, but still have it be, referenceable.
Yeah, so if you did something like make quantity a dashed line, that
Hmm.
very visually separates it from sales and profit. So we can
Right.
tell that it's supposed to be something different. You can make it a different line pattern.
Yeah.
Kind of a funky one.
Different color, you can control the measure color, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we
Make
make
it
that,
gray or something.
yeah, like gray even, just to again kind of
Yeah.
separate it. I really don't like that
Yeah.
line.
That's neat.
So yeah, you've got some options within dual axis and shared axis to really do some kind of funky things.
I took you a different direction there. Dual axis, shared axis. Then we did a combination. So
Yeah,
that is cool.
and we've done this on client engagements where we have to have, this is the closest you can probably get to a triple axis chart. There's a couple other BI tools that allow for, 3 or 4 axes, and then they just don't display the scale for some of them, which is kind of awful from an actual user experience standpoint. But here we can easily see that we have the scale on the left for our sales and profit and the scale on the right for quantity. So at least we can tell what's going on with each of them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a funky one. We're gonna get
Where are you taking us? Where are you taking us next, Jared?
we're talking donuts. So what
Okay,
I'm
donut
gonna do,
charts. Yes.
let's talk donuts, and then we'll use that as a nice segue into viz extensions.
Okay.
So donut charts in Tableau are not something that's available out of the box. We've got pies. We could build out if we take sales and then we take region. We can drop region on color. We can change this to a pie and then put sales on angle. And great, we've got a pie chart. That's nice. We'll take a pie. Um, but if we wanted to, again, just kind of make this a little bit more visually interesting, we can make this into a donut chart with some really hacky workarounds. So again, bear with me while I do some jumping through hoops in the back end. I'm going to put a min 1 in rows, and I'm going to put a second one in rows. And then I'm going to do what we talked about before and make this a dual axis. So I'm going to take this bottom pie chart and slap it right on top of the pie chart above it. So now we've got both pie charts in one. I'm going to go ahead and make the size a little bit bigger here, just so that it's a little bit nicer visually. The other thing that it's done is it's put measure names and region on color. I don't really want measure names there. I just want my 4 regions on color. And what we see here is still a pie. And what we want to do, and this is the thing that I can never remember, however many times I do a donut, is which one of these we want to make the whole. I did this not 30 minutes ago just to prep for this call, and I couldn't remember. Couldn't tell
I think
you.
it's the bottom one.
Is it? Let's try that. We'll see. So if we
Circle,
take
make it a
the
circle.
bottom one and we take out the color on region and we take out the sum of sales, and we're going to make this size a little bit smaller. It is the bottom one.
Yeah.
Now, this size slider never gives you exactly what you want the first time. You just have to kind of click around. That's not too bad.
Yes.
If we use that size and then change this to white, now all of a sudden we've got a donut chart instead of a pie. Is it actually a donut chart? No, it's a pie chart with a white circle on top of it that looks like a hole. But even this lets us do some kind of fun things. So if we go ahead and hide these min 1 headers, just because they're not doing anything for us and they're kind of ugly, we can go ahead and hide the grid lines for the rows to get rid of that line across the middle. And now if we want to start adding some information to this, maybe we take some of sales and drop that on labels. And that's great. Now we can see what our number is for sales. in the whole, we can actually do the same thing. We can take sales, and because we're not splitting this middle pie into any slices, that's going to give us our total, which is kind of a nice way to be able to see, okay, here's for each of my regions what that number is. But then also I have that grand total right in the middle, quick and easy. So donut charts are a little bit clunky out of the box. It's not something that there's just a, click and it's done. It's not like in the show me menu. But I'm led to understand, Stuart, that that functionality is coming, that there's a
Yeah.
beta going on right now for Viz extensions for donuts and for stuff like Sankey's as well. Do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I definitely can. You're sharing, Jared. Do you want to pop in this link real quick? So we don't have access to the beta yet, but let me put this in the chat window. Give me one sec. I don't know if you want to click on this. But this is, yeah, we touched on it a little bit earlier. So Tableau is making an effort to make the more complex visuals readily available inside a Tableau workbook. So Jared, if you scroll down, this is in beta, so you can go test this. So imagine you're in your workbook, right? You just add an extension and you could bring that in. I think if you scroll down, Jared, it'll show the actual Sankey. Yeah, kind of bring that in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you have an extension, and that should be available for donut charts. Hopefully, many more. So that is coming. It's not GA. It's not generally available right now, but um, it's coming. So that'll be really interesting. Sankey charts are incredibly difficult to build in Tableau out of the box, so that'll simplify that chart. And I hope they will simplify the donut chart if that's way too hacky, and hopefully many more that they'll add.
Yeah, I've
I will
built a
say,
in
yeah. Go ahead.
Tableau
Sorry, Jay. Go ahead.
box. I've had to build a Sankey chart like that once, and that was enough to
Yeah.
not do it again ever. It was awful.
Right. Yeah, Tableau's made a big effort to add extensions. I don't know if people on the call have heard about this, but um, there are companies out there that actually build apps on top of Tableau. One of them that comes to mind that we work with a lot is called Info Topics, and they have all these different extensions that really hit areas of Tableau that the Tableau's not necessarily focused on, and so they have some really cool stuff. They have dynamic PowerPoints that they can do. They have a show me more gallery where you can do like crazy tree diagram. What are some of the stuff, Jared? It's like they have some really neat visuals that they can do. Um, but yeah, there
Remember.
are companies out there that are doing this, and you can implement that and configure it with your Tableau deployment. So something to keep an eye on. Jared, we've got right about 13, 12 minutes. Are there questions from the group? Questions from anyone? I see a lot of great comments. I think this was a good session, Jared.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, if anyone wants to come off mute or use the chat window, ask a question.
While we're
Has
waiting,
anyone signed up for the beta? Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
I was just going to say, while we're waiting on some questions and while you're chatting with the
Yeah,
audience, I'll set up Viz and tooltips on this donut because I did promise that we'd show that too.
yeah. Let's show that. That's a great feature. Let's show it.
So I want to see where, okay, so our map was on sheet 6. So if we want to add some additional detail into our donut chart, this is where we do Viz and tooltips. Is you just come in and edit the tooltip, come to the insert menu, and you can insert your sheets. So if I want to see that map by region here, I can just hover over and it's going to actually zoom in and show me just that region and all those states. So you can start to see where those sales are coming from. So really neat feature to add that next level of detail.
Yeah, and save real estate too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have another view of that, but it's really handy in that scenario.
Yeah, we could do the same thing with what was it, sheet 3, that has the rounded bars on it that we built.
Yeah. The view is too large to show. You would edit the height and width, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so we can make this max 500 width and height, see if that'll do it. Yeah, that gets us the whole view. So if you ever run into that error, you can just go into your tooltip menu and just edit that max width and max height. Yeah, it starts to give you a little bit of a second level analysis view.
That's really cool. Okay, we had a question come in. Not sure if this is the data set for this, but is it possible to build out a flight map to track deliveries? That's a great question. So no, not the right data set, but that is a phenomenal question. And it is
Totally
possible.
Yeah,
Totally possible.
there's there's a guy who works with Tableau that we partner with to do trainings for state and local government. There's probably a handful of people on this call who know us from those training sessions. And I know he's done a demo before displaying flight paths from different airports. So you could easily do the same for deliveries if you wanted to see from your distribution warehouses or wherever you know that things are getting shipped out from to your customers. You could build that out with that same kind of path tool on the lines with a map. It's a bit of a funky workaround, but I'm sure if you search on
I got
Tableau.
it right here. Yeah, there's one. I just found it on public. That geospatial curve. I think you can download it. It looks like.
Yeah, so that's where I was going to
Hopefully.
go. Is I was going to say if you can download the Tableau workbook, you can dig into exactly how they made this. So this is using airport codes as geographic fields, it looks like. But if you add Latin long for your customer addresses, or if you wanted to just do it by like city and state, you could totally do that.
Yeah, Jelani, there's some good tutorials out there. Definitely, you can deconstruct. It is a bit more complicated, fair to say, Jared. This type of visual, but maybe they'll make that simpler with Viz extensions because that's a great use case. It comes up a lot.
Yeah, I want to say this uses like sines or cosines or something like that. So there's some funky math to get like the curved paths, but a straight path would be a little bit easier.
Yeah, it looks like Xavier linked a YouTube video to um, a yeah to a good article. And Pascal, I agree. Andy Kriebel is fantastic on YouTube, and we have always loved what he does. So definitely check out Andy Kriebel and Tableau Tim. Someone asked about the recorded session. So we've done a number of these recorded sessions. This will be out there in the next few days. You can go back and watch some of these tips. We've also done, Jared's led a session on parameters. We've done just general tips and tricks to get you faster in the product. We've done advanced dashboarding was one of them, calculation. So
Yeah.
there's lots of good content out there.
There's
Like
some
and subscribe.
there's some cool
Like,
stuff
there's
on
my
the data side too, right? Like we've
yeah
talked
yeah
about
yeah
what Matillion and or
yeah
Fivetran or
data
something like
lakes,
that. Yeah, data lakes and
migrating to
yeah,
cloud. Yeah
cloud
yeah.
migrations for sure. Seeing a lot of that. Because that was one of the things I was noticing with that beta is it's only available in the web editor on cloud. So if you're on
Mhm.
server, I don't think you can get access to that. You can on Tableau
Right.
Public, probably. It debuted as a beta first on public. But
Yeah. Cool. If there are no more questions, cut out a little bit early.
I have a quick
Hopefully this was
question
a
if you don't
good.
mind.
Yeah,
mhm.
please.
If you have any, could you share any tips or fun things you've noticed when using like rank and rank dense?
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, ranks are kind of funky.
I was using it
So
recently and was very struggling pretty significantly in trying to, I guess, do some of the what is it, fix like some level of details around it.
oh yeah, and you'll have some trouble using ranks with level of detail because that's a table calc and a fixed calc in the same thing, or table calc and level of detail. Um, so yeah, and ranks are one of those things that we use infrequently enough. I recommend anybody go ahead and use this this like guide over here just to remember. So if we want to just rank these by sum of sales, and we'll let that be let's do that descending. Pretty sure that's how we're going to want to do that. And then if we bring that out and just make that discrete, yeah, that starts to look a little bit better. So I don't know if we'll have any people with the exact same. Okay, so we do. We have some people who are tied towards the bottom, and a rank dense, I think, would give us those ties as, or maybe there are pennies differences on these.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get a good. Yeah, dang.
Yeah, it's got decimals in it.
So let me do this. Let me just make it round. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
So rank dense. That's actually interesting that it made those. I guess because it's summing the floored sales. So we're really making this more complicated than it needs to be here. But the rank dense will give you grouped numbers. So if people are, if you have two things that are tied in the ranking, it's going to rank them that way. And there's other options as well. All of which to say, I don't know if this is really answering your question, because it sounds like you might be more in the deep end.
It's largely confirming that it's not just me, because I've
Oh,
been really
no,
throwing my head at it.
Okay, so yeah, this is giving us 777, and then these two are both 779. So kind of saying there is no 778 because we have two people tied here. But no, to talk a little bit more about ranks, because they're by nature table calculations, you're going to be limited on what else you can do with them. And they don't really exist outside of the table that they're in because they're calculated within the table. That said, if you're using Tableau Prep, you can actually run those rank calculations in Tableau Prep and then calculate off of that field as though it's any other measure or dimension, which can be useful as long as you don't need that rank to be modified by the level of detail in the view. So if you just wanted to rank people by like first order date, you could totally do that in Prep. And then that's no longer a table calc. It's just a native field in your data source. And you could run calculations off of it using fixed calcs, whatever. So that opens up a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more complexity. Something that we've done before, but we had a client who was trying to basically build a model in Tableau to determine like score investment opportunities. And we ran a bunch of ranking calcs in Prep and then brought them all together in a data model to build an overall score for those potential investments. And that was a really head spinning project, but it's technically doable in Tableau. And if you want to do something like that and you get stuck, I hate to say it, but feel free to reach out and we can
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great. The issue ultimately was I had some additional aggregations within the view, and the rank was being tied to something else. So with those additional numbers being showed, it was counting them when I didn't want it to. I want to kind of be stuck at the a higher view.
Yeah,
yeah. Ultimately, this has been really appreciative and kind of verifying the frustrations.
Awesome. Your frustrations are 100% valid, and it's not something you're doing wrong. You're right on point.
All right, we're close enough to time. I want to leave people with this. If you have ideas for what you want really Jared to present on, and I'll help with the orchestration of that. We are all open to ideas. We want to make this about y'all as we kind of plan out the rest of the year. So email us. I'll put my email in here. If you have ideas, let us know, and we will incorporate that as best we can into the future sessions. But yeah, with that, Jared, thank you. That was fantastic. We'll have that up on YouTube as promptly as we can. We'll see you middle of the month in July. I hope everyone enjoys the beginning of summer here.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all the kind messages too, guys. We appreciate that. All right. Jared, thanks again. We'll talk soon, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks,
Bye.
Stuart. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Take care.